Host, Kevin Haugen.
Well, thank you very much and good afternoon. Welcome into today's community comment. Again, I am your host, Kevin Haugen. It's my pleasure to welcome into our Daily Dodge TV studio this afternoon our guest here on Community Comment today. 2 weeks later than our normal scheduled appearances, but we still appreciate the police department making some time to talk with us here on the program today. Joining me today again is our guest, Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson with the Beaver Dam Police Department. Lieutenant, thank you again so much for coming in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, and thanks for being flexible on the schedule as well. We had some stuff going on that particular date, and it was just a good opportunity for us to switch it, and we appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So,
We're flexible. We try to be flexible. You know how busy it is at the police.
And vice versa. Sometimes it's super busy for you guys,
exactly.
too. So, yeah.
Exactly. And we'll dive in a little bit just how busy it's been the last couple of weeks for the Beaver Dam Police Department. It's been a lot for the people in blue here in the city of Beaver Dam. We'll again talk more about that in just a couple of minutes here. But if you have a question for the Lieutenant on Community Comment today, you can call into the program at 887-9595, or you can text 885-4446. Again, the numbers are 887-9595, or you can text 885-4446 if you have a question for the Lieutenant here on Community Comment today. And Lieutenant, yeah, it's now fall. The weather's getting colder.
Yep.
It's a little bit.
The nights got some frost and I guess a freeze last week.
It's getting colder. Yeah, it's.
I'm not going to say that four-letter word.
I
might have to.
We might have to in a little bit. There's a topic that will be coming up in a little bit that we'll have to. If we can avoid it, we'll try to. But
right. But yeah, we're gonna have to talk about it because it's coming.
It's right around the corner. Unfortunately,
darn, I don't want to.
It's happening. It's happening. But
absolutely.
First off, want to look back here at the last couple of weeks for the police department and give you an opportunity just to let our listeners and viewers know just what's been happening with the department. It's been. It was an extremely busy summer as well. You guys seemed like every couple of days something was happening at the police department. And when you got in here today, you mentioned that it's been kind of the same deal last couple of weeks. So hand over the mic to you, Lieutenant. What's been happening at the police department?
Well, like I said, we've had a busy month so far. Lots of stuff going on in the city. You said we weren't going to talk about it, but we'll talk about it. We had, a presidential candidate come visit Dodge County, and our department helped out with that. So, although the sheriff's office took the brunt of that particular event, we still sent about 8 officers to go and assist. So that kind of was a planning opportunity for us, and definitely the sheriff's office. And that's one of those things where those special events happen. You got to be ready for them and help out as much as you can. So we have that mutual aid agreement with the sheriff's office, and we're glad to help out. And it seems that everything happened. It was safe and productive, and amen. Yeah. So it's good. Yeah. So we had that. We had a couple of incidents. I know we did a press release about the report of a juvenile in Swan Park with a firearm, and that took up the majority of that day dealing with that. If I can add to what was in the press release, it's just saying that we had talked about like why did we do press releases for some things like the stuff I'm about to talk about, and why do we not do press releases for other things that I'll talk about and you didn't know yet. We actually had a high-speed pursuit go through the city, and we had an individual crash into the side of a building in the very early stages of that pursuit. And a lot of it has to do with informing the public and making sure that they know that they're okay. So as an example, this high-speed pursuit that happened, there were no major injuries. The driver was slightly injured, had some scratches and stuff like that, and injured himself while fleeing on foot afterwards. But this happened in the middle of the night. It wasn't all over the scanner page. It wasn't all over chatter. It was one of those things where it was just self-contained. We got it. It was all taken care of. I'm sure there were a lot of questions out there, but you'll see there's a criminal complaint out there. If you guys want to look into it, it's all there. It's available for you. It's all public record. So, and like I said, nobody was hurt. So the public wanted to know about what had happened in Swan Park because it was a busy park, daylight, after school, and you see 2 officers chasing through the back of neighborhoods, trying to apprehend this individual who was the suspect in this crime. So that was something that, because the public was concerned about what was going on, there was a firearm involved. It was on chatter that there was talk of a gun. We need to tell the public, like, hey, Everything's under control now. We've got that gun back. A suspect is in custody. There were no shots fired. Those are the sorts of things that we want to get out in those press releases to let them know that it's okay and still give them a little idea of what's going on. And the third thing that we balance on is we have to make sure that we're protecting the case for our district attorneys, our prosecuting attorneys, and not violate the rights of the suspect as well too. We do, whether or not what our opinions are of who's guilty and who isn't, that's not us to decide. That is up to the judge and jury and our judicial system to figure that out. So that's why we only release certain details. When you have a juvenile involved, we try not to talk about how old they are. We're not talk about a sex, their identification, and we leave that stuff out because that's part of the juvenile justice system. If it was an adult, we could talk a little bit more, but I can't give you the criminal complaint for a juvenile. So, and that's kind of why I can't release any further information right now, or we're choosing not to. And we don't want to expose the city to a liability either, and so that's where we are on that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, I know, obviously, in today's day and age, news spreads like wildfire online.
Absolutely.
And, when somebody mentions something on Facebook, it can quickly blow up and, people pick those things up and those messages can be spread pretty quickly. It's, I'm sure, a big reason why that if law enforcement, I'm sure you guys are, like you mentioned, pay close attention to the chatter pages.
Yes.
Online. If there's misinformation being spread that could be potentially harmful to the community, if they're saying something like there's still a suspect on the loose, and you guys know for a fact that there isn't one, I'm sure those all are determining factors, as you mentioned, that go
Correct.
into putting out a press release.
Yes, absolutely. And we try to do it as quickly as possible as well, because you don't want people wondering what's going on, afraid to go out to Swan Park and have a good time where a situation was resolved.
Yep, yes.
And vice versa. We don't want people being under the impression that everything is absolutely fine and there could be a dangerous suspect on the loose as well. So it's a balancing act between those two or three things to try and communicate properly without revealing too much that would get us in trouble. You know what I'm saying? And still have an appropriate communication to the public.
Yeah, I know in your position, Lieutenant, you're one of the guys who, one of your primary roles is putting together press releases. You don't get to all of them, but a good percentage of that come out of the police department you've had a hand in. I guess one of the questions I do have is just, is that a process that goes through a couple of different channels first? Like
Yes.
what goes into that process?
Usually whoever the highest ranking officer that's on duty at that particular time is the guy who does the press releases, unless it's something very, very major, where then we involve the lieutenant of the detectives, or it's a major case where a lot of investigation is needed. So with that said, I handle the stuff that happens while I'm there. So that was I arrived shortly after the Swan Park incident occurred. That was my shift, so I handled that one. Other ones, actually all of them, we either go through the deputy chief or chief, send them a copy of that press release, whether they're home, awake or not. Hey, wake up, we got a press release for you. They read it over, make sure that they're good on it. And it's also nice to have a second set of eyes, because even though you've got spell check, even though you've got grammar, there's times where you'll put a sentence in there that just like another set of eyes, and in your own mind, it makes sense. And somebody else might read that and be like, that is the weirdest run-on sentence. It makes no sense. I don't know who's who here. And you need that. You need that kind of like an oversight. So we don't want to present ourselves to the public and to the media as, who did a monkey put this together? Right? Because I've actually sent one out recently that had a huge spelling mistake in it, and I sent it, and I looked at it afterwards. I'm like, how did I miss that? And I go to the guy who read it over for me. I'm like, how did you miss that? Like, what were you doing? Are you trying to? Like an idiot. So we get that second set of eyes, not just for the content, but the grammar, and you want to be professional in it. So, and in addition, we also kind of need that second opinion of, is this an appropriate amount of information? I always try to put in there, really, if it's true, there is no further danger to the public, because we just want to come out and just black and white say that if that's what's going on, because I don't want people worrying, if there's something, if there's any loose end in there, like if I said the incident is still under investigation, but there's no further danger to the public, that makes people feel all warm and fuzzy. But if I said incident's still under investigation,
sure, are
there more people involved? Yeah. Is there something, whatever, you can fill in whatever blank there is, and people get concerned about that stuff. So we try to put the public at ease as much as possible. But yeah, that's kind of like how we do it at the Beaver Dam Police Department, is The primary officer in charge writes that press release. We get a second opinion from somebody higher up or even level and send it out.
As somebody who does quite a bit of writing for their career, I know how important it is to have a couple of set of eyes,
Oh, yeah.
and that
Absolutely.
doesn't always
That's-
happen.
yeah.
We don't have always the ability to have several people check those things. So there's only usually one time. It's
Right.
one read through. So
it's time sensitive
Yeah,
too. It's
exactly,
not like
exactly.
writing a paper for college where you write it, you go to bed, you proofread it the next day, and you got your mind is fresh. You're like, it's time sensitive. You got to get it out there, so you got to do it quick. So.
it's a challenge.
Yeah,
It's a challenge.
absolutely. Yeah, and I appreciate that. When I read your articles on Daily Dodge, I
So when you see a lot of typos, you like, all right, I kind of know.
I don't see a whole lot of them, but I appreciate how important that is to actually, do that type of proofreading. Yeah,
it
and
takes
I
a
can't
lot of
imagine
work.
doing it 12 times a day or however often you do, and I'm doing it like once every month, if that.
That's not to say my job is harder than the job of a police officer.
No,
We are in
but
no
there's
ways
that particular thing.
in maybe one small particular area.
But it's completely different. Like
Yeah.
what we do, we consider easy because we do it every day. There's some stuff that I wouldn't want to do that you do. I mean, like if I had to publicly speak 24 hours a day, no, that's not 24 hours a day, but as much as you guys do,
Yeah.
it would be exhausting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like I'm on this show for an hour, and I try my best to talk and communicate and fill that hour with good content for our listeners. And that's exhausting to me. I mean, I walk out, I'm like, whew, okay, we're good.
You need to take a day off. You need
Not
to
a day off, just a little break. You know what I mean?
Fair
But
enough, fair
I
enough.
can't imagine that constant.
It's always interesting to get insights from different people in different jobs. I always feel like the human race would greatly benefit if people could switch jobs with each other
sure.
for a day.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be very long, just a couple hours maybe, but I think a lot of people might be more forgiving of other people in different careers and different jobs.
Walk a mile in someone's shoes.
I
Absolutely.
love that phrase.
Yeah.
That's very true, and I think for officers, and that's a very true statement that could be put forward for that career field. But our guest here today on Community Comment again is Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson with the Beaver Dam Police Department. Again, the phone numbers to get into the program are 887-9595, or you can text 885-4446 if you have a question here for our guest on Community Comment today. And coming up here at the end of the month is a big event that I'm sure will keep law enforcement
Absolutely.
busy as well.
Yep.
Halloween's just right around the corner. Trick-or-treating is coming up. What are some
Correct.
safety recommendations that we want to pass
Absolutely. So just so if I got this right here, I want to make sure that I'm saying this right. And I just double checked because it kind of, it's like always the same Sunday, but I just want to make sure I had it right. It's October 27th, which I believe is a Sunday. This is a Sunday, right? Yeah.
That
pretty
is
sure. Let me double
correct.
check there.
26 is the Saturday, I want to say.
Yeah, because sometimes other communities, 27th,
26.
making sure I got that scheduled right, make sure my guys are
I have
working.
double-checked your work, and you are correct.
Excellent. Thank you very much. See?
See, that helps.
We're doing it live.
Correct.
Doing it live. We're good. And it's from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Citywide trick or treat. So we will have extra officers on duty. All of our officers will be out on patrol. Obviously, there's calls that are going to be coming in during that time. But we always talk about these safety rules. It's one of those things where I remember, God, might have been 5 years ago, we had a pedestrian child get struck by a vehicle while trick-or-treating. And everyone was okay, but the child was injured. The driver was being as careful as they could have been. It was one of those situations, if I recall correctly, where it was driver minding their own business, child not paying attention, a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of distractions. If you're out there driving on trick or treat, just first of all, not to say that you can't bring your kids and have them hop in the car and drive around, but just make sure your kids understand that they should be crossing at crosswalks. And when you are the driver and you approach a crosswalk, slow down, especially during trick or treat. Same thing I say around school time, okay? Because not only will the kids be crossing there, they might jump out at you in the middle of the street too. That's why I say use the crosswalks. But you as the driver can't trust everyone to do that and follow the rules. It's not just your driving; it's everybody else's. Is a common thing that we say. Be defensive, because you don't want to hit a kid, whether it's your fault or not. How would you feel? You know what I'm saying?
Great.
Like it just, like it's one of those things. So yes, please encourage your children to use the crosswalks, and as you're driving, be careful, watch the sides, but don't, you continually scan your entire field of view. slow down, watch the speed limit, go slower than the speed limit, especially in the residential neighborhoods. I know one area that we always watch is North Center Street because it's a residential neighborhood and it's a major state highway. It's a nice wide open space. It feels good to do 25 miles per hour there, or sometimes people even go faster. It's not a good time to do it during trick-or-treating, so we always try to look out on that area as well. So yeah, that's just as far as driving, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. As far as keeping stuff safe for your kids as well, talk about your kids about those traffic safety rules. Make sure they're crossing. I highly recommend going down one side of the street, crossing a crosswalk, coming back on the other side rather than doing the zigzag, crossing the street several times. Every time you do, it's a little bit of a risk, okay? So do that. Make sure that they understand to stay visible as well. So there's a lot of like fun Halloween costumes out there. I'm really happy that our city does 4 to 6 because that's still light out during that time. It starts to get a little bit towards twilight at the 6 p.m. hour. But just keep that in mind. If they don't want to wreck their costume by putting something bright on it, have them carry a bright orange neon bucket or a reflective tape on their shoes or something that's going to get them noticed, but you don't want to ruin it. It's kind of like, Mom, it's going to be cold outside. I don't want to wear my winter coat under my costume. It makes me look stupid. Okay, I agree. Yeah. Don't wear the winter coat. You're going to freeze to death, but you know what? You're going to look cool while you're freezing. Same thing with the safety stuff. Yeah. Get some safety stuff in there. Even if it doesn't match the costume, get something that's visible, especially with your younger children. Okay, so that's one of those things. Make sure you stick to the designated hours of 4 to 6. Please don't go after because it will be dark outside. I kind of hit on that a little bit. Make sure you travel in groups and parents go with your kids, especially the younger ones. So that way you can kind of see what they're doing, monitor their behavior. Yeah, they're going to get ahead of you. They're going to get away from you a little bit, and that's fine. They're going to have fun. But if we have adults and parents out there, that's huge because if kids start acting up, they can control the kids, Be courteous, try to have your kids walk on the sidewalk. Don't be cutting through yards. Don't knock over Halloween decorations, things like that. And of course, when you get home, make sure you check your candy too. And I always used to say it was always like a safety thing. When I was growing up, they're always worried that there'd be a razor blade in the apple. Well, there was a piece of metal that we found in a piece of candy several years ago. That, yeah. We don't know what the source was of that. We know the idea of where it came from. We don't know what the cause was at this time. But it's one of those things, just check your candy, make sure everything's all sealed up and ready to go. The other thing with checking your kids' candies, there's a lot of allergies out there too. So if your kid has an allergic issue with peanuts or tree nuts or whatever, you'll know. But that's another thing to check as well. One thing that I thought was kind of cool is that there are some houses out there in the community that will have like allergy-free treats, and they kind of label their, like, you'll know. Sometimes it's like a teal-colored pumpkin that they have up there, and that's kind of a cool place to go, especially if you can't eat a Snickers bar because you can't have peanuts, and that's an option for you guys to look out for, and it's always good to have maybe an option, if there's a kid out there. It just, I'm not trying to, like, I'm not trying to be like every person has to do this, but if you've got a kid out there, just trying to put yourself in their shoes, like we had talked about earlier, and just imagine like going and I can't eat more than half of this stuff, because of the peanut butter and the peanuts or whatever it might be, just kind of a cool little thing, make you feel special. Nice. Since it kind of does suck to have an allergy like that, so yeah.
Good things to keep in mind.
Absolutely, yes. And I'm trying to think if there's anything I forgot.
Well, if you want to maybe take this, may be a good place to pause. We need to take a break, so maybe we can go through our list again and see if there's anything we missed when we come back. Again, we're joined with Beaver Dam Police Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson here on Community Comment. Again, we have to take a quick break. More Community Comment is coming up next.
Director Kevin Haugen.
Well, thank you very much. And there's the cameras. Welcome back into Community Comment. Again, I'm your host, Kevin Haugen. Our guest here on the program today is Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson with the Beaver Dam Police Department. If you have a question for our guest here today on the program, the number is 887-9595, or you can text 885-4446 to get those questions in. And you have one more segment to do that, because this is our last segment here of Community Comment.
We like questions.
Yeah.
At least I do. I don't know.
I always enjoy getting. This is Community Comment, so we want to
Right.
hear from the community.
Yeah,
And
that's why we do this. It's the community part of it.
100%.
And, yeah.
But we do have other topics. We do have other things we can dive into if we don't get those phone calls on our program today. We
The
do
more
have.
phone calls we get, the less stuff I have to come up with to fill the whole hour. But I do have good topics.
We
today.
do have
Yeah.
a couple of things to get through in this second segment. But if you have questions, please again
Feel
call
free
in
to ask.
if you have any of those. One last additional thing, we talked about Halloween safety in our last segment before we went to break. There's just one other thing we want to touch on quick before we move on to a different discussion topic here, and that's a safety. I don't know how you want to phrase it. A safety protocol, safety thing that does.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that we do it. We do have individuals in the community that are either on probation or on parole itself that get checked in on by the State Department of Corrections, the P&P officers, if you will. They go around with us and the sheriff's deputies outside of the city, and they check on these individuals and their residences to make sure that they are not participating in trick-or-treat if that is something that is required by them in their specific probation and parole laws and rules. And then, like I said, that's something we assist them with. So we go out with the probation officers, we knock on the door, we ensure that they don't have their lights on during trick-or-treating, we ensure that they don't have trick-or-treating advertisement or Halloween decorations, and they cannot participate in trick-or-treating if it's specifically forbidden by the Department of Corrections or another law. So those individuals who would qualify for those sorts of things, they are checked, and they are checked every year, and we are looking forward to going out there and making sure we're keeping the community safe with probation and parole this year. And I know they always do a press release. I don't want to step on their feet or anything, but certainly when that happens, it just confirms that we're out there doing it and checking it and trying to keep our kids safe too.
It's another, to add on to that, another thing law enforcement recommends is only going to houses
That you know.
and lights are on, that have
in
all this.
neighborhoods that
Correct.
you know, and also, I mean, when your parents are with you and they're looking at the adult there, you know what I mean? There's that understanding of like, you know, like, hi, parents here. You know, it's a good thing to have the kids with the parents.
Be respectful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah,
That too.
that's a great
absolutely.
point. Again, we're chatting with Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson here on Community Comment. One more time, the phone number is 887-9595 or 885-4446 if you have a question today. Moving on to another fall-related topic, another thing that comes up quite often this time of year, because honestly, living in Wisconsin, you see them almost throughout the entire year, but there is a more likely chance of running into them while you're behind the wheel of a car. And that's,
almost running into them is the problem. That's,
correct.
Yeah.
Not to hit it too far close on the nose there, but yeah, it's running into deer. They are out and about this time of year. And Lieutenant, I know we said that before coming on that it's not necessarily a huge problem on a lot of city roads, but the city is expanding, a lot more rural areas and rural roads to drive on in the city. And what are some things that people need to be aware of?
Sure. Well, first of all, driving the speed limit, that's huge. Being aware, especially at dusk and dawn, those are the times that most of the deer are out and they're foraging for food, etc. Something to be aware of, just the biological nature of the deer. There's a season coming up here, usually during bow season and getting into gun season a little bit too. I'm not a hunter, so I'm sure there's a lot of hunters out there going, what are you talking about? But there's rut, which is basically the mating season. And a lot of the times the deer have one thing on their mind, and it's not safely crossing the road. And they will be out and active and not doing their normal routine. Okay, so just be on the lookout for that, especially in these next couple of weeks, going on months here, that they will be out, they will have one thing on their mind, that's not being safe, so be careful, especially around dusk and dawn. If you have to swerve to avoid a deer, if you have to slam on your brakes, Always be aware of your surroundings. Don't ever cross into the oncoming lane of traffic to avoid a deer. If you have to hit the deer, hit the deer. It is one of those things where you will be better off versus hitting a vehicle. Okay, if you go to the curb, if you go to the right-hand side, be aware of what's there. So this is kind of heads-up driving that we're talking about. You never know when the deer is going to jump out. You never know which way it's going to go. But if you end up hitting a deer, hit a deer. If it's enough where you give us a call and we'll handle the crash for you. You can call your insurance company. It's part of what it is to kind of live up here. But we don't want you swerving out into other obstacles, which would be worse to hit, especially oncoming traffic. So just be careful. There are certain areas that if you drive the same roads every day, you won't be expecting it because it's routine. But now this time of year, you could have deer coming in. We see it a lot on the edges of the city where the rural areas have recently been kind of settled, if you will. We now in the city, we annexed this big plot of land north of Hemlock Road up into A&W. So we might be getting called up there a little bit more often, especially when we share that jurisdiction against the town of Beaver Dam and the county as well. So we're ready for it. It's rare that we get called for, but it does happen. It does. If you're driving the speed limit, especially 25 miles per hour in town, that usually gives people enough time to stop. It's when you get out into the 55 mile per hour roads that it's not enough time to stop based on your headlights,
In your career here at the City of Beaver Dam Police Department, how many do you think you could? Is it one hand you could count that you called out to a car versus deer crash, or is it two?
I'm thinking 3 times that it happened in the city that it was legitimately ours, and probably another 3 times that we got called out to assist the county because it was so close to the city and they were busy. Yeah. So one officer 6 times in 9. Almost 10 years, it happens.
I'm terrible at math, so don't ask me. But it's rare, but it can absolutely happen, specifically in the city.
Yeah, and I think I had to dispatch 2 deer, where they were severely injured and not going to be able to get up and run away. And the humane thing to do is to, take care of that. And we contact the DNR. A lot of people will take the meat, and if there's not someone who is interested in doing that, there's always someone who's willing to take it. So we figure out the harvesting of the deer, it does not go to waste. It's still, the venison is still eaten and taken care of properly. And so it's one of those sad things, but it's the humane thing to do.
Yeah, and I know another thing that law enforcement will always recommend, especially if this is on a busier stretch of road or on a road that the speed limits are a little bit higher than maybe in the city of Beaver Dam. So maybe this is more for outside the city specifically. But if you do hit a deer, don't get out of your car and walk around and check on things. Stay in your vehicle and make sure you call who you need to call.
And if you do, make sure you do so safely.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if a deer is hit and it is staying in the road, you have cars now being displaced in that lane, and if they don't see you on the side of the road looking at your car, that could be a problem too. So make sure you do so safely. Always give us a call in law enforcement to report that the deer got hit. Sometimes, it's as simple as for us to go out there and remove the deer from the road safely. Other times you need an accident report for your insurance company because we've seen deer break windshields, break a radiator. I've seen turkeys completely total a car because it's a turkey. Yeah. It's a turkey. Who would have thought a 14-pound little bird would take that
little
car
cannonballs?
They can do it.
Yeah.
They can. Yeah. Yes. So yes, we've even had cows get hit by cars that have gotten loose.
I guess that's
not in the city, in the county.
Oh, that's
but you hear those things.
Yeah,
that's the life of a deputy versus a city police officer. It's the little jokes that we make.
Yeah.
And like, wow, that's a new one.
We should just say keep an eye out for wildlife.
Correct.
Maybe not deer.
But mostly deer.
But mostly, especially this time of year.
I hit a raccoon a few days ago. And
it can happen.
It does. It does. Yep.
We're chatting with Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson from the Beaver Dam Police Department. Our next topic I want to dive into maybe would have been better suited for talking about how busy the police department has been the last couple of weeks, and that was not too long ago. The drone team specifically was asked to assist out in Waupun with the Waupun Police Department. And Lieutenant, I'll let you kind of explain the case and what happened there.
Absolutely. So Waupun had a individual, they either got into a fight or a domestic type incident. They were on probation and parole, and after They realized either that the cops had arrived, they were being called, or he knew that he was in trouble. He fled, and he went out into kind of a mildly wooded area, tall grass, brush, things like that. And there were Fond du Lac County deputies as well as Waupun police officers actively looking for him, and they had him narrowed down to an area of where he could have went. But it was completely dark outside, and he was well covered in this brush. We didn't know that at the time. I think they were actually able to use his ankle monitor that he was wearing to help kind of narrow down where he might be. But even then, they still couldn't actually put eyes on him. So Beaver Dam offered the drone units. We have 4 pilots right now that are certified and have the federal unmanned aircraft system license to operate the drone. We've got 2 drones. We grabbed our newest one, went up there. It has a thermal camera. So it actually, you can adjust the color settings, but the way we have it set is black and white with red being the hottest. So if you look at an open field, and we were just talking about deer. So if you see a deer in the middle of a cornfield, you're going to see the corn rows in black and white being hot, and then red being the absolute hottest. That deer is going to turn red. Okay, same thing if you have a suspect hiding in brush, which what we had up in Fond du Lac. In Waupun, we got the drone up for about maybe a minute, kind of like acclimated, looked around, found a couple of red dots that we wanted to check out, and literally the first one that we went to was the suspect lying on his back, hiding, and we started getting lower. We got on the radio, told Waupun and Fond du Lac that, right underneath the drone, we got something that's hot, it's moving, it looks like a person. And seconds later, they just swarmed him and got him up. He stood up, put his hands up, they placed him under arrest. So it worked out very well, especially considering the circumstances. We had perfect conditions. It was cold outside. Everything else was cool. He was warm. The human body produces that heat, and he stuck out like a sore thumb, and we got him right away. That's the second time our drone team has actually been able to do that. We had a high-speed chase where the guy pulled over on the side of the road, got out and ran out into a bean field and just lied down in a bean field. And bean fields are not that high. If you stood up, you'd see them, but there's no way that you can search methodically. Maybe a canine would be able to pick up on it, but we were even in that instance, we were able to see not only the suspect lying in the middle of the bean field, we could see his footprints that were still hot, leading up to him, leading away from the car. And I mean, it's very amazing technology. It is an excellent law enforcement tool to have, and we're looking forward to actually expanding the program, not only having our aerial drone out for outdoor scenes, but also having one that's able to go inside of a building where we can tactically clear a building and we don't have to send an officer in risking their life when it's a situation where we can find out where people are and the layout of a building with the drone without having to worry about sacrificing a human life to do it. So, yes, so we currently have those 2 drones that are outdoor aerial drones. We're looking at selling one of those and then acquiring a rather inexpensive interior drone for emergency response team.
I'm assuming, again, I have no clue about how, the different type of drones. I've only seen them being flown through friends and things, but I'm assuming the ones that you would use, like you mentioned, you can't take the outside one that you take for outside one and take that inside and use that to help. Is that
so you can? It's just not. So we're going to buy one that is specifically designed for inside.
Okay.
So it has guards over the propeller. So if you were to scrape over the corner of a wall, it's not going to crash and break the propellers. It'll just bounce off and keep going. It has sensors that can see where things are in the room, whereas the other one is meant for up in the air, and if there's something close to it, it actually moves away. Like if you're too close to a tree, I can't push myself into the tree. Like it won't let you. It'll show up on the screen that there's something on the right. It won't let you. Where this interior drone, it knows where stuff is and can bump against them if it needs to.
Sure.
And if it were to come in contact with a person, let's say a suspect or even someone that's on our emergency response team, and I bump into them as the pilot, it's not going to hurt them. They're not going to get cuts on their fingers or wherever. It's not going to shave their hair. There's these guards. It's also very small. It's lightweight, extended battery. It's designed to go into small places, where the other one is designed to be up in the air for a long period of time, go up against wind. It has a thermal camera on it, that you can see in the dark, and that's stuff that doesn't necessarily is not needed for the interior applications.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you on the drone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
So you've taken them up. You've flown them
Yes.
up, and you've done those things here already on being a police officer.
Absolutely, yes. And like I said, it's a great tool, and we're trying to kind of assist as much as we can surrounding departments. And a lot of times we don't have people that run in the cornfields here in the city.
Yeah.
However, they run in the cornfields around the city, and we want to help out as much as possible. We train. We do have a couple cornfields in the city. Went in there with Officer Salazar a couple weeks ago, and it's just good to know there's a certain way to do it. When the corn is taller than you, there's a certain way, if you go down the rows of corn, you can see. Fond du Lac is another example. They had a lost child that had run out into a cornfield, and that they were doing it the right way. They were going up over the top, going down the rows, and you could see him stick out like a sore thumb.
I think they released video.
They did.
So you can watch that. It's online, I believe, posted
Yep.
that you can watch and see kind of what that process is for law enforcement to search for somebody.
And that is one of the most, that's a great example of how difficult it is. Just imagine yourself on foot. You have acres of corn. How do you find someone? You know what I mean? You don't. On foot, you'd have to go down every row of corn, and you maybe can see 2 or 3 to your right or left as you walk in the dark. How? You don't.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah,
You couldn't
exactly.
do it.
But the drone gets up there. It has the height, has the heat sensing capability, and you can see them. So
Interesting. And when the police department does eventually get this other drone that can fly, maybe this would be a good one to bring here on Community Comment. We can fly.
Perfect example. We could take a little tour
Exactly.
of the interior of the studio.
That
here.
would be really, really fascinating too. So let us know as soon as that happens.
Absolutely. It's going to be probably in our 2025 budget.
Okay.
Once that gets approved and that whole thing. So it will be next year. But
All right, so stay tuned.
That's the plan.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We only have a couple of more minutes left here on Community Comment today. With that time, want to spend a few moments discussing. I know we talked about this at the start of the show. We didn't
sure
want
did.
to.
I'm going to say it.
You have to say it.
Snow.
Yeah, it's
coming.
It's coming. Unfortunately,
Most likely.
Yeah, most
Yeah.
likely. I've heard from some people. I don't know how true this is, but it potentially could be a milder winter
All right.
with a little less
I'll
snow.
take it.
I don't. Again, I'm no weatherman. Please
Sure.
do not hold me to that. Don't play this back and say you said no.
Yeah.
I'm just passing along what I heard from other people.
Is that the almanac?
That's one place.
I want to know how they do that.
I don't understand how that.
Yeah,
It's
I
always
don't know.
fascinating to
It
me how they
is,
figure
it
those
is.
things out. But that's not. We're not here to talk about weather forecasts
No.
and how much snow or snow we're going to get.
We're here to talk about what happens when it snows on your car.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
how we get that snow off the streets. So,
Yes.
anyways, winter parking. Here we are.
Yeah, here
Let's
we
talk
are.
about it, and I'll talk about it next month too, I'm sure.
We'll talk about the rest of the winter, I'm sure.
Yes. So if you have a vehicle that you park on the street regularly, stop on by the Beaver Dam Police Department because between November 1st and April 1st, you have to have a parking permit in order to park it on the street during winter months. Officially, the mayor will make an announcement and say sometime between November 1st and April 1st that winter parking rules are now in effect, and that's when you need your parking pass. So it is inevitable at some point in time the mayor will call it out and say winter parking is in effect. So go down to the police department and get your pass now. It's good for the whole winter parking season all the way up to April 1st. So the rules are once you get your sticker, it's $25. There's an application process. We go and we make sure that you're parking on the street for a good reason, and we do limit how many people can park on the street because we can have everybody park on the street, and I'll get to why in a minute.
Yep.
Why that's a bad thing per se. Anyways, you got to make sure the sticker's in the lower left-hand corner of your bumper. You got to have it on there, and then if it does snow, you are responsible for cleaning the snow off the top of your car and also the snow that the snowplow missed when they went around your car. So that's kind of why we keep the price of the parking pass cheap. That's why we go through kind of the approval process to say, hey, last year he didn't do any of these extra stuff to kind of help us out and help our snowplow drivers out. We're not going to let you park on the street. Okay, so that's kind of why. But anyways, the whole reason being is if we can get the snow off of the roads, we have safer roads to drive on. We spend less taxpayer dollars on repairing the roads because the snow does not melt and turn into ice and spread the cracks open and make the roads worse. Okay, so those are the two big reasons as to why we have these winter parking rules, and also a third, snowplow headache of going around all these cars.
It's a lot of work.
And
It's
it
not
never
easy.
gets
Yeah.
cleared.
Yep.
It's one of those things. So that's why we do it. So $25 at the Beaver Dam Police Department for parking on the street. That is all the same as last year, and you're responsible within 24 hours to remove the snow from your vehicle and the areas that the snowplow missed before and after your car, if you will, as it passes through. We appreciate that. The snowplow drivers absolutely appreciate it too, and we've got a lot of people that are with the program and do an excellent job at helping everybody out. There is one change though this year. Okay, so we used to have the capability of parking in the public parking lots throughout the city, certain ones of them. The rules have changed with that. There is now a pass that you need to purchase for the parking lots, and there's more parking changes coming as time goes on here. Kind of ordinances that were passed by the city council and with the mayor. With that said, if you are choosing to do winter parking in a public parking lot, the pass is different. You have to purchase a year-round pass for $120. It breaks down to $10 a month. So that is a lot of money. That's different than $25. You might want to park on the street for $25, but the $120 pass will allow you to park in your designated parking lot that you choose during the winter months. And like I said, there might be more changes with that $120 pass as time goes on here. So like I said, if you're listening and you have questions, please feel free to give us a call at the Beaver Dam Police Department, 887-4614. And during normal business hours, we'll be able to help you out and answer those questions for you. If you are parking on the street like you did last year, there's no changes. It's the exact same plan as we did before. But if you were parking in one of those public lots and you had to buy a parking pass before, it's now a little bit more expensive, and there'll be more capabilities for this parking pass as time goes on, and they adjust the ordinances appropriately.
Yeah. I don't know, you may have mentioned it, and I just completely did not remember hearing it. Know that if you do park on the street and you have that permit, does it come with a sticker that you put on it?
Sticker, yep. And you got to put it in the lower left-hand corner of your bumper.
And then if
the rear driver's side.
Correct.
So as we drive past, we see, sticker, good,
And after a snow event, if it's covered, those are one of the things you want to make sure that you can clear the snow off, that law enforcement can see that sticker and they know that the individual has a permit and the car is allowed to be there.
Absolutely, and clear the snow off the whole vehicle too. Is to let us know and get that stuff before and after, and take care of it, throw it on the snow bank.
Because I know sometimes snow plows come back through, they push snow, and it could cover sometimes those spots on a car. So sometimes it's good to just go out and double check after those plows come through.
Absolutely.
I know that we were looking at talking about this. Maybe is a good topic for next time, since we're running out of time here. Winter driving tips and safety things, clearing snow. We'll dive into that.
Feels like a good November topic.
That's a good November topic. We'll say that for our next community comments here. Actually, it's sooner than we think now with this
2 weeks or so.
2 weeks from now, the first Friday of the month. So with that, I want to thank our guest here on Community Comment today, Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson with the Beaver Dam Police Department. Lieutenant, thank you again so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And that will do it for today's Community Comment.